Hello, my name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions.
And I'm Proven Paradox, a guy with a lot of questions.
And you're listening to Bright on Buddhism, a podcast where we discuss East Asian Buddhism, answering listener-submitted questions from listeners just like you, and introducing concepts of Buddhism that you may or may not be familiar with in a casual, conversational setting. Enjoy.
Here, how does the Dharma travel to different places across the world?
This is a good question. It primarily travels with the people who practice and adhere to it, whether they travel somewhere for trade, for a livelihood, for safety, or even when they travel against their will, they take the Dharma with them. When they raise families and spread the Dharma to them as well, then the Buddha's teaching has established a foothold in that place.
Fascinating. That helps explain how it can mix and meld with local traditions so easily. It travels with and between people who cross borderlands and possesses mixed and layered identities.
Exactly.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Bright on Buddhism. This week we will be discussing Hawaiian Buddhism. What is Hawaiian Buddhism? What is its history? How does it interact with the tensions surrounding Hawaii's statehood? We hope you enjoy. So, what is Hawaiian Buddhism?
Hawaiian Buddhism is the collective term for the Buddhist practice of predominantly Japanese diaspora and migrant communities on the Hawaiian archipelago. Pew Research Center reports that 5% of Hawaii's 1.4 million residents, around 70,000 people, self-identify as Buddhist. However, we've discussed problems with the statistics that reflect self-identifying adherents of religions. Namely, they don't ever capture the total number of adherents to a particular religious tradition. Specifically in the context of Japanese Buddhism, many practitioners don't self-identify, and many self-identifying adherents do not practice. So, it can be very hard to get a picture of how many Buddhists there actually are. Those two problems are compounded by another, which is that this research is attempting to capture statistics about diaspora and migrant communities. Typical Western-style polling and research methods are notoriously poor at seeing into such communities. This can be because they do not offer their polls in languages besides English, because their pollsters do not go where the diaspora and migrant communities live, and or even because they sometimes only look at data from citizens, and many migrants don't have naturalized citizen status. In an attempt to make up for these shortcomings, we may look at and speculate about those who identify as no religion in particular. If we define practice as visiting a Buddhist temple on a semi-regular basis, we can reasonably expect some of those people practice Buddhism. This constitutes 22% of the population of Hawaii, about 280,000 people. Similarly, we can look at the number of Japanese migrants in Hawaii. We cannot and should not assume that they all practice Buddhism, but many definitely do. Japanese people are the second largest ethnic group in the state. As of 2010, they constituted 312,292 of Hawaii's people. This figure excludes mixed-race Japanese people, indicating that the actual number of ethnically or culturally Japanese Hawaiians is likely to be much larger. Totaling it all up, we can estimate the number of practicing Buddhists in Hawaii to be somewhere from 70,000 to 200,000 people. For comparison, we estimate there to be around 3.5 million Buddhists in the whole United States, which puts as much as 6% of American Buddhists in the state of Hawaii alone. This is higher than expected because, according to the United States Census Bureau, Hawaii's population is less than 1% of the whole United States, yet holds 6% of the United States Buddhists. Getting away from these statistics, we can examine the breakdown of different sects of Buddhism in Hawaii. Jodo Shinshu is by far the oldest and most popular sect in the state, followed by Shingon, Soto Zen, and Nichiren Buddhism. These sects and their affiliated temples are usually clustered in and around Honolulu, Hawaii's capital and most populous city. However, Buddhist temples and sacred spaces are scattered all over the islands. There are 11 Jodo Shinshu temples and affiliated organizations, such as Buddhist schools, on the island of Oahu. Then there are 12 on the Big Island, 5 on Maui, and 4 on Kauai. There are 11 total Zen institutions in Hawaii, mostly Soto, but some Rinzai Zen as well. Speaking to how much more popular Jodo Shinshu is than the others, there are only 3 Nichiren institutions in the whole state, and only 1 Shingon temple, located in Honolulu. Looking at non-Japanese Buddhism, there are 3 Chinese Buddhist temples, 2 of which are Chan and 1 of which is Pure Land. Then there are 2 Korean Buddhist temples, 1 of which is Seon-affiliated, and the other one is non-affiliated. Finally, there's 1 Vietnamese temple, which is Thien. Looking at Buddhist new religious movements, there is also a Soka Gakkai Center, a Shinyoin Center, and a handful of others as well. Hawaiian Buddhism has developed into a unique religious entity unto itself. It has syncretized with indigenous Hawaiian religious beliefs, affected and been affected by the tensions of Hawaii's statehood, and has been altered or even transformed by the challenges faced by the migrant East Asian communities in Hawaii over the last 150 years.
What is Hawaiian Buddhism's history?
The history of Buddhism in Hawaii is directly correlated to the history of East Asian immigrant communities in the islands. The first known Japanese people in Hawaii arrived on the disabled ship Iwanakamaru in May of 1806. This was a cargo ship that got pushed eastward into the Pacific by bad weather while sailing the southern coasts of Japan. After the storms cleared, the ship drifted for 3 months, with the crew starving and running out of water, before they were discovered by an American ship in the Pacific in March, which docked in Oahu in May. The crew was put under the care of Kalani Moku, Prime Minister to King Kamehameha. They stayed in Oahu until October and returned home to Japan in the winter of 1806 and 1807. This encounter served as a first point of contact between Hawaii and Japan, alerting both that the other exists. Over the next 75 years, sugar plantations were built on Hawaii by American traders as an early step in Hawaii's forced assimilation into the United States. Owners trafficked Japanese people escaping the upheaval of the Meiji Restoration to work on those plantations. The first wave of Japanese people who came to Hawaii and stayed there arrived in 1868. This group was called the Gannen Mono, or the people of the first year of Meiji. There were 142 of them, and they brought their Buddhist practice with them. Further waves of immigration arrived after this, and the first Jodo Shinshu temple in Hawaii was established in 1889. It was called Honpa Honganji Hawaii Betsuin, or in English, the Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii. This coincided with a shift in focus of the Jodo Shinshu organization from growing Pure Land Buddhism in Japan alone to growing it among migrant and diaspora populations all across the world, particularly in the West. As a result, Jodo Shinshu sent their first missionary worker to the Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii in 1897. His name was Shoi Yamada, and his job was to unify and organize the adherents of Jodo Shinshu Buddhists in Hawaii. After Yamada's work was completed, Honi Satomi was sent in 1898 as the first kantoku, or head monk of the temple. Since then, 36 Jodo Shinshu temples have been constructed all across the state. The Zen temples in Hawaii, the largest of which are Daifukuji Soto Zen Mission and Daihonzan Chozenji Rinzai Zen Mission, were established in the early half of the 20th century, and then the Hawaii Shingon Mission and the Nichiren Temple were also founded in the 1910s. Nearly all of the largest Japanese temple institutions in Hawaii were founded between 1895 to 1935. I reiterate that this coincided with Japanese Buddhist responses to the Meiji Restoration and the light-speed modernization and westernization that occurred in Japan during that time period. The historical narrative we are often taught is that the Japanese borders were forced open to the rest of the world by Commodore Matthew Perry in 1852. After trade picked up between Japan and the West, and after governmental power in Japan was restored to the emperor, Japan underwent a cultural crisis. On the one hand, there were older cultural institutions, such as Buddhism and feudalism, and on the other, there were newer and more modern ones, like Christianity and Western science and capitalism. To many Japanese thinkers, these ideologies served Western cultures far better than Buddhism, Shinto, and feudalism had served Japan, so they were anxious to leave tradition behind and embrace modernity. Buddhist institutions could have fizzled out of existence, but instead they followed suit and sought to modernize and reposition in order to survive. This meant that, like the rest of Japan at the time, they turned their attention to the West. They began organizing missionary projects and campaigns all over the rest of the world. This move had layered meanings and representations. growing international missionary projects served imperial interests as Japan aimed to become a world superpower unto itself, on a level with America and England. In addition, missionaries presented themselves as agents to convert the whole rest of the world to the Dharma, which was presented as the only religious affiliation and spiritual path suited to modernity. Hawaii was one of the most populous and developed kingdoms to Japan's east. This enticed white Westerners to extract resources like sugar cane with cheap labor from Japan from the Hawaiian Islands. Meanwhile, it enticed Japanese Buddhist monks to officially establish temple institutions to serve those communities.
How does Hawaiian Buddhism interact with tensions surrounding Hawaii's statehood?
Many in the United States don't know this, but Hawaii, the last state to enter the Union in 1959, is a conquered nation. It was an independent, if not unified, kingdom until the 18th century, when European powers began to stop there for Pacific trade enterprises. James Cook, the famous British explorer, made the first official and recorded contact with the Hawaiians in 1778, and he was actually killed there a year or so later. After that, Hawaii became a hub of Pacific trade. In 1795, the separate kingdoms of Hawaii were unified into a singular polity by King Kamehameha. In the 19th century, American and European missionaries traveled to Hawaii to convert people to Christianity. Many of them stayed and built the sugarcane plantations we've been discussing so far. Hawaii was then slowly destabilized and assimilated into the U.S. more and more between the late 19th century and the year 1959. There are several layers of tension involved in Hawaiian Buddhism. First, there is the tension presented by the history of exploited Asian labor on white sugarcane plantations on land that belonged to neither party. Still, the Asian migrant population and diaspora communities came to identify Hawaii as their culture and their place of birth. Then, there is the tension between all of the religions involved: Christianity, Hawaiian indigenous religion, and Buddhism. This resulted in more syncretism between the three religions than has historically occurred in other places, partially due to a great deal of ethnic and cultural mixing. There are many in Hawaii who identify as Christian, Buddhist, Japanese, Hawaiian, and American all at once. Then there is a layer of tension from Hawaii being conquered and forced to become a U.S. state for America's colonial interests. This tension still pervades in Hawaii to this day and remains close to the surface. There are movements that seek to reestablish Hawaiian independence, but at the same time, many in Hawaii are neutral on the issue and instead focus on protecting and respecting Hawaiian culture outside of the context of Hawaiian statehood or independence. We've been talking about complicated and layered identities, and I want to describe a spot that embodies that point very poignantly. There's a replica of a very famous Japanese Buddhist temple called Byodo-in in Hawaii's Valley of the Temples on the island of Oahu. This is a valley where many different faiths share burial sites. There are Christian cemeteries, indigenous Hawaiian holy sites, Buddhist temple sites, Shinto sites, new religious sites, and others. The whole valley operates as a funeral home as well as a park and tourist attraction. The space was established by a white American real estate magnate from California in the 1960s named Paul Truesdale. The valley itself is very historically and culturally significant to the native Hawaiians as well. According to local legends that I heard from Hawaiian people that I met when I visited there, the valley had functioned as a burial site since the conquest of Oahu by King Kamehameha. It was thought to be haunted by the spirits of those who fell to him in battle, and to keep those spirits from wreaking havoc on his kingdom, the site was established as a sacred space for the dead around the year 1800. This status then somewhat informed Truesdale's decision to make it a funerary park with the many faiths and the many identities of Hawaiians who lived on Oahu represented.
We hope you enjoyed this week's discussion of Hawaiian Buddhism. Join us next week where we will be discussing Gelug Buddhism. What is Gelug Buddhism? What are some of its similarities and differences to other schools of Buddhism? What is its historical significance? We hope to see you there. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Nick here, and you've been listening to Bright on Buddhism. Normally at this point in the episode, we would throw to a charity that we think that is deserving of your money or your support. Because there's so much going on right now, we have decided that we're going to open it up to any charity that you think is a good cause to share your resources with. So, if you like our show and would like to support us, please instead give to a charity that you believe does good things for people in need. Thank you.
My name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions and voice of Hearer.
And I'm Docs, editor, question asker, and voice of Hermit.
And this has meant Bright on Buddhism. Thank you for listening. If you like our podcast, or if you have a question you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider leaving a comment or review, subscribing, or joining us on social media. Email us at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com or find us on Mastodon at brightbuddhism@mstdn.party. As always, citations and resources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Thank you.